Well, it looks like we're live. Good afternoon, everybody. Coming to you live out of Honolulu, Waikiki Beach, of course. There's my view every day. This is the balcony. I'm thankful for everybody that's going to be joining me today. This is my first live messenger, or my first Facebook Live. I've done this in front of the camera a couple times, but never really fully have done it for anybody else. Today we're going to talk about a few things. Let me introduce myself. Of course, many of you know me as Michael. I've been bartending for almost 30 years now. I got my start in Klamath Falls, Oregon, small little town. Italian Classico Ristorante. I was the bar back, kitchen help, and then the bartender was fired for drinking too much, and they kind of threw me in as the bartender. I really started learning quite a bit, and then I came up to Portland and went back then. It was Portland Bartenders Academy, but now they don't have any such place. Just every now and then people go to bartending schools and things like that, mostly in London, some in New York, there's a couple in San Francisco. When I moved to Portland, I got a couple different jobs. Got my start really in craft cocktails, working in a place called the Veritable Quandary. It was an amazing indoor-outdoor little eatery. It had a two-story bar where literally we had ladders, rolling ladders, where you could get your top shelf stuff. It was amazing. I really got my first taste of what truly bartending was all about. That was in the mid-90s, and I loved it ever since. So I am currently at Strip Steak in Waikiki. I am on a furlough until the 30th, as everybody knows, because of this COVID thing. We're really hoping that everybody comes back 100%. We're hoping that our business comes back, and for you and your families, I hope that everything is going well for you guys as well. A few things that we want to talk about today. I do kind of have I have a meeting going on as well. I don't know who's going to be participating in that and who's going to be on my Facebook Live. But a couple of things that I want to talk about today are like rye whiskeys versus bourbon whiskeys versus Scotch whiskeys. Other thing we want to go over are everybody has seen them. Not too many people know how to use them. Is vermouths versus amaros, and then of course the one thing that everybody knows about but doesn't necessarily know how to use is bitters. And then lastly, towards the end of our discussion, we're going to go over a few things like the difference between tequila and mezcal and how you use them either together or how you use them apart. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off right away with discussing a few things that not a lot of you may know. This is called a shaker. More or less comes with padded side, always a glass side. Some people use the metal side. I like using the glass because you get to see what you're pouring into. And of course mine, you can't see the detail, is always an octopus. This is a mixing glass. Bar spoon, of course. This is a Boston strainer. This is a double strainer. You do use both of these together. Not a lot of people understand what double straining means. That usually means that when you're done stirring and you've got particulates at the bottom, or when you're done shaking and you have particulates at the bottom, that you strain all of those off, and that's when you would use that double strainer. A lot of people have these in your home. Add one to your bar. The other side that we're going to do today is we're actually going to use a little thing that I like to call the smoking gun. This I picked up online. It's about 45 bucks. Incredibly useful. You put your I want to say applewood, Chiave, mesquite, whatever you want in the top. Turn it on, light it. I like to use a couple different things. I like to use my smoking canister, or if you have an empty bottle and you want to really impress your friends, you can smoke your cocktail into the bottle and then you can pour it. Now today I have an issue. I'm using small little cube ice, very, very small cube ice. I'm in a closed down resort. So literally I am the only person. Aloha, thanks for joining. So I'm using very, very small ice. It's the only, I do not have a freezer here. I did put an order in on the Rock. And if you don't know about them, they're in Honolulu. They make specialty clear ice cubes. So the next time we do this Facebook Live, I'm definitely going to have some ice cubes on hand. But for today, what we're doing is actually super simple. You don't need anything special, and that was the point, is that we're going to be shaking with cube ice. Anything that you have in the freezer, we're going to be stirring with cube ice. So that's pretty much everything that we have here. But what we're going to start out with is, of course, the difference between rye whiskey and bourbon whiskey. This is Rittenhouse Rye. This is actually a bottled in bond. What that means is a couple different things. That the production of this has to be from one production season. It actually has to be from one distiller at one distillery. So that means one person doing the distillation, one person at a single distillery. The other is it has to be in a federally bonded, that's of course the bonded, for 4 years. It has to be under federal supervision. And lastly, it has to be bottled at a minimum of 100 proof. That's usually what most of them mean. This is rye, which means that instead of corn mash and wheat, that we're actually using rye in this. It's 51% or more. That's what becomes the rye. And of course, bourbon has to be a mixture of both, but nowadays it has to be 51% corn mash. It has to be not necessarily from Bourbon County, as we know. That law has changed long since ago. And it has to be barrel aged for longer than 2 years. So in this case, this one is done for 4. Rittenhouse is one of the oldest. Elijah Craig is the second oldest. This is actually owned by Heaven Hill now. And if you don't have one of these in your bar collection, please pick one up. It's 100 proof rye. It makes it an amazing Manhattan. It's a little stronger than most. So we're going to get started here. We're going to make a simple cocktail today that's kind of on everybody's mind about how to use this product. This is actually Cynar 70. 70 proof, which means it's a little higher proof. Not a lot of people know how to use this. This is actually an Amaro. So when we talked about Amaros, I have a couple different ones here. I have Cynar and I have Amaro Nonino. Now both of these Amaros are completely different. This one's a little sweeter, a little more citrus. This one is definitely has a very bittersweet flavor to it, made primarily from artichoke and about 13 other herbs and spices. Now, the difference between these is simple in that one is made from a citrus and peach pits, apricot pits, things like that. That's the Amaro Nonino, very light and sweet. It's actually considered a fortified wine. And then Cynar 70 is actually made from 13 different herbs and spices. Can be clove, can be marjoram, can be what else am I thinking of? Thyme. Artichoke is the primary bitterness in this one, and what they do is they roast the artichoke and then toss it in as the fermentation is happening. So both of these are considered Italian Amaros, completely different flavors and completely different uses as well. Today we're actually going to combine them together because what we want is we want the sweetness of the Amaro Nonino, we want the bitterness of the Cynar 70. We're going to use equal parts of either one. And then we're going to add some chocolate bitters, and we're going to add some Angostura bitters. Now, Angostura has been around for a very, very long time. You might ask yourself, what is a bitter? Bitter is simple. Take a bunch of plants, macerate them, dry them, put them in some alcohol. When it's sat for about 7 to 10 days, and the alcohol, it has a really nice color, really nice texture to it. Give it a taste. See if it's something that you like, and if it is, strain everything off of it, take the rest of that maceration, add a little bit of water to it, bring it up to a boiling point, and then extract the remainder of those flavors out of it, and then put the two together. Now you have the bitters. I've been making bitters now for about 6.5 years, almost 7 years. There is probably not a bitter that I haven't made. I make bitters out of curry. I make bitters out of lemon peels and clove, star anise, mint, you name it, I've made it. So if you want questions on, or if you have questions on how to use any of these bitters, you can contact me directly. Really just look them up. Bitters are super easy to make. They're super easy to use. Some are more bitter than others, some have more alcohol than others, and some don't have alcohol at all. So realistically, bitters are a defining taste in most cocktails. I would say 85% of the cocktails out there have a bittering agent in it. Cynar 70 is considered a bittering agent. This is actually considered a bitter tomorrow. So again, fortified wines, bitters. Bitters don't have any wine in them, they just usually have alcohol. So let's get started on this particular cocktail. Let me check this and see if I have anybody asking any questions. All right, so this is pretty simple. Everybody knows what this is: mixing glass, strainer, bar spoon. I have some ice right here. This is a very, very, very simple cocktail. And what we're going to be using is we're going to be using a two-sided Japanese jigger. Now you see a lot of people using these. They're super easy to use. 2 ounces on one side, 1 ounce on the other side. This is the same exact thing. 1 ounce on one side, 2 ounces on the other side. I like using some of these together in the fact that I can keep my ½ ounce on this side and I can keep my 2 ounces on this side. So that way, as I'm pouring, some people like to use just one because, you know, quite honestly, when you're moving fast behind a super fast-paced bar, which I usually am, it's a matter of getting that cocktail 100% accurate as well as getting it out on time. What we're going to do is we're going to start out with 1.5 ounces of Rittenhouse rye. Just pour it straight into the mixing glass. We're going to go straight at 1.5 ounces. Boom. Nice and easy. Put the cap back on. I apologize. I'm running a couple different avenues here. So we're also doing 1/2 ounce of this Cynar 70 right there. And then we're going to do 1/2 ounce of the Amaro Nonino. And again, we talked about this. The Cynar 70 is bittersweet, whereas in the Amaro Nonino is citrusy sweet. It's got a really nice flavor. It's got orange peels, lemon peels, same lemon peels kind of that limoncello is made from. We'll go into that little topic at a little later date. So right now I have 1/2 ounce, 1/2 ounce, and 1.5 ounces. So I have 2.5 ounces of alcohol in here. Now this is chocolate bitters. If you don't have this in your stash at home, definitely get one. You can pick them up online. They usually cost anywhere from 11 to 15 bucks. We're gonna add 1, 2, 3, 4. Now a lot of people say, how do I know that I've got a good amount in there when this little... So I've got jet fighters out here today. You'll know when you have enough in there because if you do 3 dashes of bitters, it should completely fill your bar spoon. That's about the amount of... Wow, some serious jet fighters out here. So we're going to 4 dashes of the chocolate bitters. We're going to go 2 dashes of the Ango bitters. And then we're going to get our ice, wait for these jet fighters to calm down a little bit. Hold on, we got one more. When you're using small cube ice in your cocktails, make sure that you only fill that ice in about halfway. Don't fill it all the way up to the top. And we're going to stir this cocktail, because it has Cynar 70 in it, about 30 times. We're going to use our little High West whiskey distiller. And to taste, just drop a little bit on your hand. Should come out really nice and sweet. And take our little strainer here, pour it over the top. And we're going to go straight in, just like so. Now, we've already cooled down the cocktail So you don't have to worry about this ice melting right away, but as we know, alcohol does melt ice. So don't put the ice in ahead of time. Make sure that all the alcohol is in that, then put your ice, then pour it over the top. If you're using a large cube, use a large enough cube that you're not going to get any melting coming from that ice. If there is any melting, pour that out before you pour the cocktail in. Now, we're going to do a quick zest on this. I like to use this type of peeler. One thing, because I can keep my little pinky out of the way on this side, and I can use some downward force. And what we want to do is you want to get just the nice top layer off of that orange, right? And if you look at that, you want to keep that white pith on the orange, not on the orange peel. The reason that we're going to do that is because three different reasons for that. The outside of this orange has some really, really lovely sweet orange oil. That's where they get it from. That white pith part on the inside, that's bitter. We don't want to use any of that. In fact, if anybody is ever muddling anything in your old fashioned, especially an orange or an orange peel, tell them to stop. Tell them to make it the right way. Tell them to take that orange peel out or that orange slice out and throw it away, because that is not how you make an old fashioned. So we're going to take this lovely little orange peel right here, and we're just going to zest it right up over the top of that cocktail, a little bit on the rim. I'm going to give it a nice little twist, nice little like that, and just drop it in, right? That's a cocktail. Okay? Cheers. All right. So, as we recap, the differences between, again, our Cynar 70 and our Amaro Nonino, both of them fortified wines, both of them considered Amaros. They are aperitivo digestivos. You all see that usually on Campari and Aperol. It says aperitivo versus digestivo. Most everything that is an Amaro is an aperitivo or a digestivo. That's an Italian word for something that you drink before or after dinner. They help with digestive. Any plant-based alcohol, and I'll say this in fortified wine, I'll say this in Amaros, and I'll say this about even Campari, Fernet, you name it. They're all considered aperitivo digestivos. Not all of them are necessarily in the Amaro category. Amaros have that special classification because not only they're fortified wines, but they have a tendency of being a very specific type of bittering agents and leaf, or I guess plant-based, where they're extracting both alcohol and water form, so somewhat the same way as bitters are, but they're combining them so that they can be added to wine to fortify the wine. Bitters, of course, don't do that. They're straight alcohol, and it's usually 100 proof or higher to get that extraction. So these are fortified wines. They are aperitivo digestivos. Very certain ones are Amaros. You can pick these up anywhere, and I would recommend using them if you've never used them before. Everybody really has, because you've used dry vermouth, you've used sweet vermouth, you've probably used, if you're a bartender, you've probably used Cochi Barolo, Ginato, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. Sweet vermouth is really the biggest one that people kind of shy away from because they don't really know anything about it. If you have a bottle of sweet vermouth in your house and you're not really sure what to do with it, you've never used it before, buy some cocoa nibs, put it in a sealable container, throw your sweet vermouth over the top of it, and wait about 7 days, and you have a Cocoa Amaro. It's very much the same way as the vermouth is made, but you're adding a chocolate sweetness to it, and then you can add that to bourbon, a little bit of sweetness to it as well, and make a beautiful cocktail out of it. So we're going to put these away right now. Actually, I'm going to talk just a little bit while I'm doing this about Rittenhouse Rye versus bourbons. Of course, when we recap, rye whiskey is always 51% or higher of the rye category. Rittenhouse is one of the oldest. Elijah Craig is actually the second oldest distillery in the United States. Funny thing about Elijah Craig is that he died penniless. I make a cocktail that I pre-batch called the Barrel Old Man in homage to Elijah Craig. He died when he was about 85 years old, really as the pioneer for barrel aging whiskey, bourbon especially. And the most ironic part about this whole category of whiskeys is that Elijah Craig lived 80 yards outside of Bourbon County. They named a bourbon from him, and he and his brother created what is now Georgetown. So when it comes to understanding where these whiskeys and where these ryes and these bourbons came from, you really have to do your research, because it's amazing out there that the people who actually started this whole world of alcohol called bourbon did so many great things for this nation that it's mind-blowing to check out. He taught E.H. Taylor how to distill and how to barrel age. E.H. Taylor, of course, is the primary teacher for Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels, of course, took Jack Daniels back to Tennessee and decided that he was going to create that himself. Or I'm sorry, and then so he was going to create that himself. And so in Georgetown, the funniest thing is there used to be a church, a sawmill, and a paper mill. That was the original starting of Georgetown. And then they don't give him credit nowadays, but that's what he started out with. He also produced the Woodford House, where Woodford Reserve is actually made currently. So when you look at the tree of who created what when, Elijah Craig was really one of the forefathers of this whole entire bourbon industry. So again, rye whiskey has to be 51% or more. Bourbon whiskey or corn whiskey has to be 51% or more corn mash. Anything else beyond that is really just straight whiskey, and we'll get into that at another time. So let's see. One small note: if you've got time at your house and you're doing any kind of, you have extra fruit and you have a dehydrator, one of the coolest things you can do in your house is actually do dehydrated fruit. These are blood oranges. They smell great. Some of them are a little bit more red than others. I use these all the time in my cocktails. I think that it is an amazing look to the cocktail as well, and even more so, it has a tendency of being a smell factor. Olfactory is, of course, your scent through your nose that comes through your mouth. That's 70% of what that cocktail tastes like. So people look at a cocktail and they think it looks amazing, but what they smell when they're tasting it is 70% of the whole flavor of that cocktail as they're bringing it to their nose. So what you really want to do is you want to add something to that cocktail that really has that oomph to it. So in old fashions, there's that orange that goes over the top of it. Lemon drops, of course, you want to make that lemon drop as sour as possible, because when you're drinking it, you have that sugar rim. So when you're bringing it up to your nose, you have a nice little lemon twist on top of it. So they're smelling that, they're tasting that, everything comes together. Let's see, we're going to, let's see, we're going to go over, pull this out. We're going to go over El Silencio today and Maestro de Bell. Now, Maestro de Bell is a tequila, whereas in El Silencio, if anybody can see those, I hope everybody's still participating well. There's a huge question up here, so I'm going to answer that one real quick. Just opened. Yes, correct, Kelly. Nice job. Kelly Hawkins, of course, is joining us. She's one of my great friends, loves. We're going to be making her some pre-batch cocktails and sending them off very, very shortly. Actually, they're already made. So, what else are we talking about today? Let's see. Okay, so El Silencio, one of my favorite mezcals to make, to use completely. I like to consider myself to be a spokesperson for El Silencio. Absolutely love them. Maestro de Bell Tequila, of course, two totally different taste profiles, but realistically they're kind of the same. Mezcal and tequila, both made from the agave. The difference is that, of course, mezcal can be made from any agave, and it can be made anywhere in South America, Mexico, except for Jalisco. Now, tequila, of course, has a very, very specific nationality to it. People think that this, tequila, is the national drink of Mexico. It is not. Mezcal is the 100% national drink, the national alcohol. So if you thought that tequila, and I remember the old days of Jose Cuervo going down to Tijuana and you know, having the shots taken between the boobs of some, you know, Tijuanan lovely. It is not. Tequila is actually very specific. Made in Jalisco, has to be made from blue agave. Those blue agaves generally are roasted, they're warmed, they're not cooked the same way that mezcal is. Mezcal, of course, is mostly taken from the heart of the agave plant. They shovel off the outer side of the blue agave or the agave. And if you've never seen an agave plant, it's absolutely giant. When I was living in Kailua Kona, I had one out in front of my house, and it was absolutely huge. But generally, even the ball can be about the size of about half of a Volkswagen. So it's very, very large. Whereas in generally, tequilas are done from smaller. There's lowlands and highlands agaves. Lowland agave can be very botanical and very aromatic, whereas in highlands can be not as herbaceous. They still are botanical, but they're generally not as herbaceous, but they are very, very hardy. They roast very well. Tequilas, of course, widespread. Everybody knows about them. Everybody uses them. Everybody loves tequila. Mezcal, slightly smoky, kind of a mystery. A lot of people don't understand how to do things with the two of them. Everybody knows about palomas. Everybody knows about margaritas. You can do the exact same thing with mezcal. You can add. In fact, that's what we're going to do today. We're going to do a cocktail that's kind of based off of a paloma. But we're not going to use any soda, and we're not going to use any lime juice in this one. Actually, this particular cocktail, we're going to use something a little different. We're going to use a sweet yuzu sake. Generally, this cocktail, I would do El Silencio and Dobel together. Make this cocktail. It's a shaken cocktail. I use equal parts, so I use 0.75 and 0.75, so that way I get the smokiness from the mezcal and I get the very lovely tequila texture from the Maestro Dobel. We're going to be using, in this particular case, we're going to be using Yamayuzo. It's a shibori sake. This one is yuzu flavor. If you see this in the store, it's usually in your refrigerated section of your liquor store or a specialty store. Buy it. I guarantee it. It's like $11 maybe. It could be a little bit more in certain stores. This will be your best friend, because if you don't have lemonade, or if you don't have lime juice, or if you don't have anything that you can create, you can do a lot with this particular sake. And today we're actually going to do that. So we're going to take something really nice and easy, which is grapefruit juice. I like using Ocean Spray. It's 100%, no sugar added. Of course, if you don't have to add sugar to your cocktails, please, please, please do not. Sugar generally, and we know this from old fashions, that you can get a really bad old fashioned because somebody added too much sugar. Too much sugar can really, really ruin a cocktail, and we don't want to do that. So we're going to make this cocktail into what I like to call a highboy glass. This isn't really a highboy, but we're going to call it one for today. If it's a tall, slender glass, it's usually considered a Tom Collins glass or a Collins glass. A lot of people like to call them highboys. Highboy is actually a very, very coined term for what is generally put in these, which is highball. Highballs are generally just bourbon or rye or tequila and some soda and another little a spritz of something else. Generally, a lot of Japanese people love highballs. I remember in the late 70s, my dad used to drink a lot of highballs. So it was one of those things where he added 2 ounces of whatever alcohol, some ice, soda water, or ginger ale, dependingly, and then he made himself a highball with a little lemon twist. I make a lot of them nowadays. So we're going to start off with our clear glass right here. I'm going to start off with this, and we're going to do something very, very unique with this. We're going to do 0.75, so we come out with 1.5 ounces total of alcohol. Now, the reason I say this is because all alcoholic drinks should be very well balanced. If you get somebody pouring you 4 ounces of Jack Daniels in a glass and then a spritz of Coke, that's okay because it's Jack Daniels. I mean, Coke is really just going to make Jack Daniels taste better. Jack is not my favorite. I drank a lot of Jack Daniels when I was younger. I threw up a lot of Jack Daniels. It's not tasty. But in craft cocktails, it's all about balance. So we have our 1.5 ounces of liquor in here, and what we're going to do is we're going to add the same amount of grapefruit juice in here, which is 1.5 ounces. Now, you may say to yourself, oh, that's just balance, 150 and 150. But actually it's not, because this mezcal is really nice and smoky. The tequila is very strong as well. This particular one is wonderful because the Maestro de Bell is like a diamante style, so it's a diamond. It's a diamond style tequila, which means that it's distilled several times, filtered several times, and it's also aged in French oak barrels. So this particular one has a very nice flavor. And then we're going to add 0.5 of yuzu sake. This is a sweeter style sake. It's going to add some very, very nice textures to this. And of course, if nobody knows what this is an Aperol. Aperol, again, is an aperitivo. So aperitivos and digestivos, very much the same. This one's considered liqueur because unlike the Cynar and the Amaro Nonino that are wine-based, this one is actually an alcohol-based. So I told you that not all Amaros and digestivos and aperitivos are the same. This particular one is a little different. This one's been around for a long time, since 1919. One of the best things that they did with this was Aperol in the bottom of glass, added soda water, lemon twist, boom, you had a drink. Everybody drank them up in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. They became popular again in the 50s. So it was really super popular. So this particular cocktail, we're going to add another 1/2 ounce, and that is our balance. So 0.5. That's a nice balance because this is sweet, this is bitter. This has a very nice French oak aged flavor, very smoky. So we're balancing these two out, and then we're adding the grapefruit to it as well. Now, lastly, I'm going to add just a light amount of sweetness to this because even though the sake is delicious, it's citrusy. So this is one of my favorite things to use. If you don't have a bottle of this, get it. It's elderflower liqueur called Saint Germain. I love it. I add 0.4 ounces, 1/4 ounce. Not much to it. You don't need any more than that. It's about equivalent to a little over a bar spoonful. We want to add that sweetness to it because that's botanical. It's not sugar. It's not, you could add like a sapodillo syrup or something like that, but in this particular case, we're going to add that because it's got such a great flavor to it. So no bitters in this one because we already have it. We already have our Aperol in there as well. So we're just going to take this, give it a nice little shake, add some ice to this one. Again, only half full because you don't know how much liquor is going to go in that. Right over the top, tap it down, give it a nice good shake. Now, several things I've been asked on the bar are, when do you know when to shake and when do you know when to stir? So it's really simple. If it's if it is a whiskey and it doesn't have a lot of sugar in it, stir it. If it's a bourbon, it doesn't have a lot of sugar in it, stir it. If it's a scotch, it doesn't have a lot of sugar in it, stir it. If it's a gin, and it's a barrel-aged gin or a beautiful botanical gin, and it doesn't have a lot of sugar in it, stir it. Everything else, shake the shit out of it. Do what you go wild. That is really, really how it goes. So this is why we do this. Goes all the way up to there. And then you take the rest of your ice and you pop it over the top. Just like that. And then what we have is, because I love dehydrated fruit, I have everything from apples, but I absolutely love these little grapefruit pieces. So these are just little quarters, grapefruits. You can see they're very nice and clear. We're just going to take one of those, pop it right up on the edge, and then that's pretty much what our cocktail is going to look like. So you can serve it like this at home, impress your friends, have fun with it. Try not to get too drunk on stuff like this. If for any reason that you don't have grapefruit and you want to use something that's citrus but you don't want to go over the top, grab a lemon peel, do the same thing, nice little zest on there, spritz it over the top of it, do the edge, and then toss the lemon peel away, because you don't want to add too much of that lemon oil to it, because you already have yuzu, you have the grapefruit juice. It'll overpower. You just want a little bit of zest to that, and then boom, now we have a cocktail I like to very, very deeringly refer to as Call Me Irresistible. I make the same style cocktail, a little different. I add some a little bit of oomph to it, where I do a Hellfire bitters, black pepper, and activated charcoal, and I call it the Black Ops. That's going to be available shortly. So currently, so that's our 2 cocktails that we've made so far. And I believe that is it. We were going to discuss how to do smoked cocktails, but right now I've got this really heavy wind going on, so I think I'm going to save that for one other day. Again, if you're going to be doing cocktails at home, everybody, especially if you're watching me live here, if you have any questions on a cocktail and you want something made from something that you have at home, if you've got like you're looking in the fridge and you go, hey, I've got like apricot jam, or I've got like an orange marmalade and gin, you know, what do I do with it? Call me up, you know, contact me over Facebook Messenger, or just if you're on Instagram, contact me through there, or just, you know, most people have my phone number. Contact me, let me know how you're doing. I will set you up with as many cocktails as I feel is possible, and then we can go from there. So thank you again for joining me on my very first Facebook Live, and I hope you guys continue to watch. Okay, enjoy.